Dobro večer I dobrodošli. Welcome, good evening. We're very glad to see you this evening at our conversation called Borders Now. I'm here with Faruk Šehić and Mirza Purić, who both flew in from Sarajevo a few days ago, and we've been enjoying Boston and doing some events and having some conversations, and we're really looking forward to tonight. Before we get started, I just want to thank the sponsors that have so graciously invested in our evening, and that would be first the Boston University Pardee School of Global Studies, the Boston University Arts Initiative, BU Creative Writing, the Pardee School Initiative on Forced Migration and Human Trafficking, and Agni, Boston University's literary journal. So we're very, very grateful for that support that allows for conversations like this to happen, cross-cultural ones. And indeed, our topic tonight is borders. Our event is called Borders Now. We want to use that theme as a kind of springboard for conversation, and we'll be reading a bit, talking a bit, reading a bit, talking a bit, and inviting you all into conversation with us. But by borders, we don't just mean geographical borders, physical borders. We also mean borders, the border of language. Translation carries texts across the border of language. In Faruk's work in particular, you can observe sort of the transgressing of or collapse of borders across time, past, present, and future, in the self, between people, between fantasy and reality. And one asks, is fantasy reality? Isn't it? So these questions are very prominent in Faruk's work, and certainly Mirza deals with these issues all the time in translating across languages. So I'll read just a brief bio of my friend, each of my friends, and then we'll do a bit of reading and sharing, okay? So Faruk Šehić was born in 1970 in Bihać, in the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Literary critics have hailed him as the leader of the mangled generation of writers born in the 1970s in Yugoslavia, and his books have achieved cult status with readers across the region. His debut novel, which in English is Quiet Flows the Una, and in Bosnian-Croatian-Serbian, it's Knjiga o Uni, received the Meša Selimović Prize for the best novel published in Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro and Croatia in 2011, and the EU Prize for Literature in 2013. He also writes poetry and short fiction. Mirza Purić is a literary translator working from German and Bosnian-Croatian-Montenegrin-Serbian. He is a contributing editor of EuropeNow and the in-house translator for the Sarajevo Writers Workshop, a collective of young and emerging writers that I also am a part of. From 2014 to 2017, he was an editor-at-large for Asymptote. Next year, Archipelago Books will release his co-translation with Ellen Elias-Bursać of Miljenko Jergović's story collection, Inshallah, Madonna, and Inshallah. So we welcome our friends here. Welcome. So we thought we'd do a bit of reading first. We wanted to look at something from Faruk's novel, which, as I said in English, is Quiet Flows the Una. And just to describe the novel's premise, the premise of the novel is that our young protagonist is undergoing hypnosis. And in the process, memories from across his life are surfacing almost simultaneously. It's not chronologically told. So you have memories from childhood, memories from the war in the former Yugoslavia, memories from after the war. And the book is written in these kind of little nuggets. So you're following a trail. The sections are small and rich and dense. And I thought we'd have a bit of reading from Faruk in Bosnian-Croatian-Montenegrin-Serbian from his original text, a section that Mirza has also translated, although the translator of the published book by Istros is Will Firth, but Mirza has also translated a bit of the book. So this section, Mirza has entitled Fish Reading, and Faruk, you want to read a bit in the original, and then Mirza can jump in with English.
Gledanje u ribe. Zemaljski sam astronaut, putujem bez pokreta, bez cilja. Atmosfera je moja tamnica. Kad bih barem mogao lutati bezvazdušnim prostorom, pa makar i zaključan u drvenoj raketi sa jednim okruglim prozorom, možda bih tada rekao Planet Earth is blue and there's nothing I can do. Slatki snovi. Zemaljski sam astronaut, putujem brzinom misli. Neću doživjeti slikovitu viziju o krstarecama u plamenu na rubovima sazvježđa Orion. To se može doživjeti samo na filmu. A neću vidjeti ni plavokosog replikanta kojeg glumi Rutger Hauer u Blade Runneru kako sjedi na vrhu zgrade, potpuno nag, prekršteni nogu i izgovara čuvenu rečenicu time to die. Sklapa oči i umire posut kišom iz mračnog neba. Neću probiti tu stratosferu iza koje se ne zna gdje prestaje fikcija, počinje stvarnost i obratno. Gore u svemiru svi SF filmovi se upravo dešavaju.
Fish reading. I'm a terrestrial astronaut. I travel motionlessly, aimlessly. The atmosphere is my dungeon. If only I could roam the vacuum, even if locked in a wooden rocket with a single circular window, maybe then I would say planet Earth is blue and there's nothing I can do. Sweet, sweet dreams. I am a terrestrial astronaut. I travel at the speed of thought. I will never have a vivid vision of burning cruisers off the shoulder of Orion. That you can only have in a film. Nor will I ever see the blonde replicant played by Rutger Hauer in Blade Runner sitting atop a building completely nude with his legs crossed saying the famous line, time to die, then closing his eyes and dying in a shower from the murky sky. I will never break through into that particular stratosphere beyond which you can't tell where fiction stops and reality begins, and vice versa. Up there in space, all the sci-fi films are happening right now. Shall I continue? Okay. I've got the jitters, for dawn is about to break. I cup my hands into a pair of binoculars and observe the evening star, the last to leave its sentry duty. Summer is no time to die, said some elderly men yesterday, gazing from the wooden bridge into the mainstream of the river. Although stars expire the same way souls leave bodies, quickly and suddenly, as I once read in a suspectly titled paperback. My reality is boring and awfully unfantastic, and I don't like realistic books. Therefore I daydream of my heart beating in harmony and collusion with remote galaxies. Night, to me, is not the time when specters from the pile of past lives come out and won't let you sleep. Night, to me, is a vacuum, the space between sunset and sunrise. Unnecessary evil. I wait for the dawn to break so I can pop out from under Nan's heavy eiderdown, which is cold even in June, because I can't wait to put on my shorts and espadrilles and go up the concrete steps undercut by the rain to the mossy retaining wall on which orange slugs have left shiny, slimy trails. I would run the pad of my index finger down those rainbow-colored motorways, follow them all the way to the holes and cracks where my finger couldn't get in. This inability to enter a minute world, the stem of a plantain leaf or a tight bud of a white rose would also haunt me in more frightful times. The walls of Nan's house are thick and warm, as blocks of tufa from the river were built into them. There is a clock hanging on the wall above my head, and the sweep hand limps and ticks over the incomprehensible inscription Tempus vulnera curabit, and every time I read those words I shrink like a boiled shirt. Slimy bodies of slugs sometimes seem darker, red and brownish in the cold lee of the elongated three-story houses, then translucent and yellowish under the sun rays popping above the dewy roof tiles of the tallest house in the neighborhood that looks to me like a medieval castle from which no one can come out happy. From its windows, a boy my age, haggard with progeria, regards me beseechingly. His features are those of a lean old man with the eyes of a harmless boy. He waves at me and smiles from the window, framing him into an icon. Spindly, homeless slimers emerge from the cracks that thin, soft fingers of moss are squeezing into. Tentacles coyly test the morning air. Cold scalpel. When I touch them, they quickly withdraw into the head, and the slug stops stretching the sticky furrow behind himself. The same furrow which the sun would later turn into a small road in the colors of the rainbow palette, a spectral Golgotha on which no one would be crucified. The softness of their bodies was harrowing, so I loved and pitied them at the same time, unable to understand how a soft body can turn into a dried-out, lifeless crust in the afternoon sun. Then I would reluctantly come to grasp that, after all, they too have to meet their end like all other living creatures. Every morning I got up and ran to the slugs until a mysterious crime took place. Someone had neatly torn off the moss from the retaining wall and filled the cracks with mortar. Surely this murderer of nature is a man zealous, curmudgeonly, and pathologically diligent. Who might he be? A dotard who would smooth out every uneven spot on the face of the earth. A carpenter with a bent for geometry who hates knots in premium wood, knots which remind one of frozen star halls. A mason with a bitter trowel in his heart, condemned to build and build furiously for all eternity, terrified by the emptiness which surrounds us. Who is this villain who has attempted to kill fancy? For 2 days I mourned the slugs, and then I soon forgot them. I had to give up a nice and tragic habit and find a new sensation. And then I discovered the fish. They are free and cannot be mortared and walled in, for water is the realm of freedom. Fish are great, big, elegant submarines with scales which cast warm reflections through water and air. Pike, faster than arrows, sunbathing on the surface between the threads of swaying reed from where they dart towards their prey. Wattled barbel, dredgers of the riverbed, which the anglers fed with leftovers of roast lamb. Roach and nays, the river cows. I discovered grayling, piscine torpedoes which leapt on the surface greedily swallowing fluorescent green flies, and trout, the sovereign mistresses of cascades and sloping streambeds. Some people know how to divine by beans, and I learned to read the fish. It will make sense here at the beginning to return to whence we came, into the water from which we are built, into the whirling streams of the underwater epic where I shall hark the anarchistic, pale-eyed, clamoring trout. Why the trout are anarchistic you'll find out later. They are pale-eyed and clamoring as a nod to Rimbaud, and I shall be a hypnotized boat, and the rivers shall carry me wherever I want.
Thank you. Thank you for that reading, both of you. I should also just mention my name is Stacey Mattingly, and I'm an alum of BU's MFA program in fiction, and I'm happy to be here too. I wanted just to start by speaking about the language in that passage. There's such a richness, Faruk, in the book there's a rich language. It's lyrical, it's poetic, it moves and deals with nature, brings nature to life. In this language, we often see our protagonists almost longing to merge with nature, to become something else. This is just one aspect of the text, but can you talk about what you are working on artistically through that language?
In the beginning, I make one sketch for this novel, and my first idea was to write a novel about nature. So I was working for days, for months, for a long time, and I see that I can't write novel just about nature, because there is nothing happen inside. There is no tense, there is no drama. So I put inside, of course, my something that I don't put in my previous books. Like I have books of short stories. It is pure war literature about war, about my experience and experience people who was with me, or some fiction also. And I was after that book of short stories, I was a little bit fed up with writing about war, and other people recognize me as a writer only about war. So it makes me a little bit nervous. So I don't want to be recognized only just author about books about war. So this book, in the beginning, when I make sketch about novel about nature, it was just one way of escapism. So I realized that I can't escape from myself and from my thoughts and my everything what is inside me, my experience, who wants to go outside from me into literature, of course. So I just relaxed myself, and I put war chapters, but different than in my previous books. in that collection of short stories. The sentences are like in telegram, very short, very precisely, without this without so much metaphors and with a lot of dialogues and with a lot of characters. So this was different because when, I think about my books like chapters. All of my books are chapters of one big book, so I will never come to the end. It's impossible. And I always think about previous books when I work on new book. So it was my intention that I make book a little different. Must be different. This sentence in these books are much longer and much poetical. Style is different. It's a little bit like Baroque. A little bit. So, some people who likes my previous book said to me, "Oh, this is good book, but we love this short stories collection Under Pressure. This is too much soft. And, it's different book. It's very. This book is not. There is of course a lot of happenings, events inside, but it's slow. It goes like river. It's very slow flow.
And yet there is sort of a counterpoint language in the book. There's almost, when we get to passages that deal with the war or the aftermath of war, a kind of plain style language, a repertorial kind of language that isn't at all like the rich language about nature that we just heard. Should we read a few lines to show the audience? Okay. Yeah. So do you want to read the Bosnian and I'll read Will's translation?
First paragraph.
Yeah.
Ljubav prema ruševinama. Pravili smo se kao da svih tih ruševina uopšte i nema, a one su bile posvuda. Oko ih nije moglo promašiti. Naš grad se pretvorio u festival ruševina i mi smo strancima naplaćivali dnevne rute gledanja i fotografisanja naših zapaljenih kuća, kvartova posunovraćenih u zemlju. Naša patnja je bila slavna. Mi sami smo bili razgolićeni detaljnije nego u porno filmu Wired kategorije. Naš grad je bio na 3. mjestu rang liste najsrušenijih gradova u Bosni i Hercegovini. Nije baš to bio podatak za ponos, ali drugog izbora nismo imali, osim da se dičimo vlastitom razmrvljenošću.
Okay, so this is the translation by Will Firth. Just a paragraph, it's the intro paragraph to the section, The Love of Ruins. We pretended all the ruins didn't exist, but they were everywhere. You couldn't miss them. Our town had become a festival of ruins, and every day we charged foreigners for guided tours so they could photograph our burned houses and obliterated neighborhoods. Our suffering was legendary, and we ourselves were exposed in more detail than in a weird porno film. Our town ranked 3rd on the scale of the most devastated towns in Bosnia and Herzegovina. That wasn't exactly something to be proud of, but we had no choice other than to wallow in the mess we'd inherited. So you can hear the difference between that language and the rich, poetic, lyrical language of the passages in Fish Reading. And can you talk about artistically how these languages work for you together in the book?
There is also a different chapter than this, I think, Blind Spot or Slijepe mrlje in Bosnia, where I work with pure intense to work in that style, because I don't need metaphors to describe horror of the war, because when you describe the horror of the war very precisely, very clear, there is no need to have some kind of jewelry, like some kind of like colors or ornaments and that kind of stuff. So it was my intention to have that kind of style, totally different from this because sometimes the horror of the war was so intense that you don't need fiction. There is no need to change that my experience, that I put it in language and transform in something different. It can be good just like that, raw and hard and hard hitting, whatever, full of emotions. And so I need that style. I also work as a journalist, so it's easy for me. I make reportage. I go to countryside in Bosnia and make stories about common people, about everything, about heritage of the war crimes and everything else. And so it was easy for me. And it can be also a little bit like some kind of intermezzo, I said in English.
Intermission.
Like some kind of break between. It's for me. It's the book can be stylistic. So, but sometimes I can put different styles inside.
Yeah, thank you, Mirza.
Yes, ma'am.
So the piece you read for us was published in the journal Asymptote. You can find it online. Can you tell us, I've been listening to you for years talk about Faruk's work and your desire to translate his work, your love of translating his work. Can you tell us two things? What drew you to that particular passage, and what draws you to his body of work as a whole, as a translator?
This particular passage, I translated that in 2013, I think. Was it 2013? It was published later, in 2014, I think. At that time, I had branched into poetry translation like a few years before that, and somehow I felt that I was still learning the ropes, as it were, still trying to hone my chops. And this passage, of course, before that, I had translated a few novels. I'd been pretty good at doing fiction. And this passage sort of course, it's a prose piece, but it contained all these poetic elements that I was trying to master. And that's why I thought it was particularly challenging on the one hand, and on the other hand, I felt that it would benefit me if I did it.
Mm-hmm. Your skills.
Exactly.
And what about Faruk's work?
Yeah, well, Faruk's work in general, you see, there is no pretense to him. I see him as someone who is genuine. I see him and his work as I don't necessarily like the word because it's been overused, but it really is authentic. There are no ulterior motives behind what he's doing, other than, the usual artistic motives, yeah? And that appeals to me, this honesty, this attitude, this, like, this is what it was like, this is what it is. It is what it is, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Not too many people in the Balkans are like that, they all have some agendas, not Faruk, Faruk's agendas are artistic, above all.
Right.
And I really like that, and I respect him for that.
Yes. And you're working right now on a volume of his poems.
Yeah, that's almost done.
Right, and you're also working on translating a forthcoming book of short stories. It's forthcoming in the original language, but you're also working on English translations, and we'll hear from both the poetry and the short fiction in just a few minutes. In fact, could you just speak a little bit further about your work? You translate across English, Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, Montenegrin, Serbian, and German.
Yes.
You move among those languages. And you also translate a great many people. I happen to know that you are translating many contemporary writers, particularly from the former Yugoslavia, now poets in particular, and you have the challenge of trying to translate unique voices even while you're translating many writers in short spans of time. So two things. Could you talk about the challenges of translating among languages as opposed to simply moving in one direction from one language to another? And then secondly, talk about how do you work and how do you bring unique voices out in English and preserve those voices when working so much?
Okay, well, hopping between languages is, I don't find that particularly difficult or challenging. You know, it's if you know a language good enough to translate from or into it, then it's, you know, it's just a matter of, I don't know, you sit down and you do it. You know? It's just they're like collars in your palette, tools in your toolbox. You know, there's nothing special about it. And as for your other question, yeah, I'm particularly drawn to marginalized voices, as it were. As you know, over the years, I've translated so many young people, especially women. I don't know why that is, but in the Balkans over the last 10 or 15 years, there is a deluge of fantastic poetry written by young women from small towns, from villages, from the sticks, you know, who nobody knows about. And you have to really go out of your way to find them. And I felt, you know, okay, high culture is fine, you know, like high-profile novels like Faruk's book and so on. They should be translated, they should be exported out into the world, but, you know, that's fine. But these people who operate in the underground, they should also get the opportunity to be heard, you know. And I felt that would be a good way of, that would be a good thing to do, you know. Mm-hmm. And then you came along and you started this workshop, which has been a veritable gold mine, you know, of talented people, you know, who just tossed their stuff at me. You know, how about try this, and of course I was happy to do it. And how I keep them distinct is by not I try not to foist my own aesthetic or literary or ethical preferences on the text that I'm working on at the moment. I trust the text and I stay faithful to it. I don't, and in the end, you know, you preserve the voice of the author. And if next morning you have to do somebody else, somebody who writes in a completely different manner, you just do the same thing, you know, you translate it the way it is. I realize that this is a bit of an essentialist view of the text itself, because nowadays it's popular to argue that there are as many interpretations as there are readers, which is fine, but you have to decide as a translator. You have when you face a text, you have to decide what it is, and you have to stick to your own interpretation. You have to value it above all other possible interpretations, because writing is a bold act, and translation should be a bold act as well. Mm-hmm. So in short, you just stick to the text. And don't try to make it about you, because it's not about you, it's about us.
Mm. You can also find many of Mirza's translations of multiple writers in the journal EuropeNow, along with his work in Asymptote. And that's one of the features of your work. I find that each piece I read that you've translated really uniquely sounds like someone else, and it is the text of someone else. And it's a gift to be able to do that.
I shouldn't be allowed to have my own style.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Let's look at some of Faruk's poetry. I find the same contrast in language in your poetry. I thought we'd look at an early poem and a more recent poem in your collection that Mirza's working on. So would you like to read the Bosnian, and we'll have Mirza read the translations?
Okay.
Okay. Let's start with Die Young and Leave a Beautiful Corpse. This was also appears in, oh, you don't have? Okay.
In Bosnia.
You do not have it in Bosnian. Okay. You want to read the translation?
Yeah, okay, we don't have the original text, unfortunately, but...
And where did this appear?
This appeared on Asymptote blog in 2013, I think. It's called Die Young and Leave a Beautiful Corpse. Thus spoke rockers. But this is another planet here on Pardish Hill. 11th day of duty goes by, the first after Smajer's death. We've smoked a bag of industrial weed. Sadmir was firing single shots over the breastwork, blew off the front sight of a rifle that lay on the logs with which we'd fortified the trench leading to the dugout. A few small side shrapnel hit him above the left eyebrow ridge. Hyria bandaged the wound with field dressing. It wasn't enough for a day's leave. Die young and leave a beautiful corpse. Thus spoke rockers. I shat on a shovel in a hollow behind the roof of the burrow and tossed hot shit over to no man's land, pissed into an empty tin of Icar beef, contracted in the trench like a worm, watering the mold of the forest floor, and I said to myself, I won't wash my hands, or my face, or shave, or clip my fingernails. Does it matter what my corpse will look like? I'll gift my ribs to God for some future eves. My earlobes will become mushrooms. Tangles of my nerves will develop into mycelia of a better man.
Thank you. Yes. So I want to just have both Faruk and Mirza read now a later poem, and then I'll ask Faruk some questions about the span of your work in poetry. So this one in English is called Emigres Soul, but I'll ask Faruk to read it in Bosnian-Croatian-Montenegrin-Serbian.
Emigrantski sol. Kada bih imao dovoljno para, poslao bih sebe u Berlin, DHL-om ili FedExom. Moja težina je oko 85 kilograma. Trebalo bi mi dosta para da svoju težinu preslavim u Berlin. Ništa, pozajmit ću novac. Uvijek ima ljudi koji imaju toliko novčanica koliko je potrebno da se stigne u Berlin u kutiji DHL-a. Odlučio sam da me FedEx ne zanima jer mu ime predugo i rimuje se sa svim bosanskim firmama čiji vlasnici vole staviti X na kraju naziva svoje kompanije, misleći kako će tako njihova kompanija biti zapadnjački uspješna u biznisu. Poslati se da dođem na Hauptbahnhof, tu sam već bio. Odatle se mogu snaći dalje. U-Bahn sam nešto malo i upoznao. Njegov miris me privlači. Navučen sam na miris berlinskog metroa. On mi obećava brzinu i dobar provod u noćima u kojima se može uživati. Moram se poslati u Berlin. Želim dodirivati kamen Brandenburger Tora, milovati guzove grčkim boginjama od kamena boje bijele kafe, piti kafu na Potsdamer placu, okružen vrapcima koji, moram to reći, bukvalno liče na pernate loptice s kljunovima koji im služe da odrede pravac leta ispod staklene kupole ispod koje su nanizana neka jedra. Čas mi se čini da su jedra, a drugi put da su džinovske kravate. I vrapci su me opkolili dok sam pio kafu, grijali se na suncu. Čekali da im dam kruha jer sam sjedio na terasi australskog restorana gdje na repertoaru nude odrezak od krokodila i file od koala. Berlin je grad u kojem te od viška istorije ne može zaboljeti glava. To me je pročistilo dok sam hodao po mrtvim njemačkim i savezničkim vojnicima, tačnije po fragmentima njihovih skeleta, po travi ispred Reichstaga. Pored rijeke Špreje, gdje nebom lete pravi orlovi, ispod trave su bili slojevi istorije čiste kao suzla. Moram se poslati u Berlin, čvrsto sam odlučio pobjeći iz Sarajeva u poštanskoj kocki od kartona na koju će nalijepiti oznaku hitno. Gore ću biti oslobođen faleričnih nacija i nedoraslih državica. Imam plavu kosu, zelene oči, sigurno će me pustiti na rentgenskoj kontroli. Jer oni znaju da, iako u Berlinu nisam rođen, imam ja puno jači adut u džepu, tajanstveni vodeni žig na svojim zjenicama. To je biometrijski pasoš države koja još nije stvorena, jedne bezgranične države. Ali do tada Berlin će mi biti sasvim dovoljan.
Emigres Soul. If I could afford it, I'd post myself to Berlin, per DHL or FedEx. I weigh around 85 kilos. and I'd need a lot of money to move my mass to Berlin. Oh well, I'll borrow. There are always people who have as much cash as is needed to reach Berlin in a DHL box. I decided against FedEx. The name of the company is too long and it rhymes with the names of all those Bosnian companies whose owners like company names ending in EX, thinking that thus named their comp would be successful like a Western Corp. I'll post myself to the Hauptbahnhof. I've been there before. I can find my way from there. I'm somewhat familiar with the U-Bahn. Its smell is enticing. I'm hooked on the smell of Berlin underground. It promises speed and good time on pleasant nights. I must post myself to Berlin. I wish to touch the stone of the Brandenburger Tor, caress the arse cheeks of Greek goddesses made of stone the color of white coffee. Drink coffee in Potsdamer Platz, surrounded by sparrows that, I must say, literally look like feathery balls with beaks which they use to navigate beneath the glass dome under which some ship sails are lined up. Now they look like sails now, like gigantic neckties. And the sparrows surrounded me as I drank my coffee, basking in the sun. They waited for me to give them bread while I sat in the garden of an Australian restaurant that served crocodile steaks and koala fillet. Berlin is a city in which more history than you can consume can't give you a headache. This thought cleansed me as I walked over the dead German and Allied soldiers, or more precisely, over the fragments of their skeletons on the green in front of the Reichstag by the river Spree, where proper eagles fly across the sky. Beneath the grass, there were layers of history, perfectly pure. I must post myself to Berlin. I'm hell-bent on escaping from Sarajevo in a cardboard cube onto which they'll post a sticker that reads, "Urgent." I will rid myself of shop-soiled nations and immature statelets. I've got blonde hair and green eyes. Surely I'll make it through the X-ray control, for they know that although I wasn't born in Berlin, I've got a trump card up my sleeve, a mysterious watermark on my irises, a biometric passport of a state that hasn't been created yet. It is a borderless state, but until it comes into being, Berlin will do just fine.
Okay, thank you. So Faruk, I wanted to ask, we've just heard a sampling of some earlier poetry and some poetry that is more recent. Can you talk a little bit about the work you're doing in poetry and what you see as the differences in what you're exploring now versus what you were exploring earlier?
I started as a poet. So my first book was the poetry collection. Second book was the poetry collection. Then I converted to the short stories that I mentioned before, that Under Pressure. So after that, I wrote also poetry book. Then I wrote novel. So it's in that beginning of my career as a writer. I was interested only in poetry because it was just I was writing after the war. I find one Olympia typing machine, and it was from the movie about Watergate affair.
All the King's Men.
Yes, one of the character type on that kind of Olympia Monica typing machine. So I was just writing every day, and it was just exercising. So I write everything that comes to my mind, and sometimes it was very that poetry was not understandable, hermetic or full of metaphors, heavy metal metaphors. So I want to write about war, but I have problems. How can I write about war? In which style? Yeah. So I want to find my way. And once I just, after years of exercising, I just, break one, not break, I just enter to one curtain. I just go through that curtain, and I see different things. I see totally different things. I see the way how I must work in my poetry. In the beginning, it was the the very short poems about not all of the poems was about my fellow comrades who was killed or who was with me during the war, but I feel that I am responsible to give them voice. So I'm of course I'm not spokesman for nobody, but I feel that I must write about that. Some of the poems I just write like I was dreaming and I was sleeping. So I suddenly wake up and I go and open the laptop and I wrote about one guy who killed me in my hands.
Who died?
Who died?
Yes.
Who died? Yes, he was shot down and he dies on my hands. Yes. So I feel I must make a little monuments. I erect a little monuments made of words. So it was in the beginning.
That's powerful.
So it was just one topic, important topic. Then I go further on other topics. And in one period, I feel that I need more space. So I feel that poems now they are my poems and they have readers and perceptions. But I was not satisfied with that. I know that I must go further. So I explore and I need sentence. I need prose sentence, and I go into the short stories. So I need that bigger space, like football pitch. Right? So I start to write short stories, and I made that book, Under Pressure. After that, I back to my old love to poetry, but I just explore. I was of course satisfied with that book called Sarajevo. So after that I start to write this book, and when I really become a prose writer, for me now it's hard to I can never write as like this or in this like poems from that period, from a book called Hit Depot. I can't make that verses.
Is it because you've found something new in prose that you feel you can't? Is it that you feel the poems that are going to come now will have to feel different? They will have to be new because you've been tackling so much imaginative material in another form? Is that why, partly?
No, it's strange because in poetry something must be hidden. You can't uncover everything. But prose, it's different, of course. You can't be have that sentence with ellipsa, with short, with ellipsis, or it's different. And I just switch myself on the prose, on sentence. So when I work on some poems, very rare, it's different, but it's narrative poetry.
Right.
It's narrative poetry. It's not so strong, not strong, how to say, tense or
Dense.
dense or dense verse, like with much more intensity inside. I believe in words. You know, we are writers. We believe in words. I strongly believe in the word as a word, and the verse. It was not magical belief. I just believe that when I work on these earlier poems, I have one. My publisher was from Zagreb. It was one very good Dirje, one publishing house, and he said to me, "I finished the book. I give them the book." He said to me, "Okay, but I think you must write 3 poems more." I said to him, "Listen to me. You can now take the gun and put in my head, but I can't do any more. This is this." So, I don't, nobody can touch nothing in the poems, even the one comma, or tačka, kako se kaže.
Full stop.
Yes. So it's, I have editors, of course, before, but when I'm totally sure that it's finished and that it's almost perfect, it's untouchable. So, but prose is different. When you go into the prose, it's different. problems with the prose book is that you can't, for me, I can write one book 100 years, but sometimes you must just cut that work and say this is the end. Because you can always work on prose, but poetry is different. When you finish, it's finished, it's over. There is no negotiations about one more verse or two more poems. For me, it's over. Now I can't do that poems like before. These poems are different. They are like they are floating. They are like flood. They are big. This poems goes on, I don't know, 5-6 pages.
Right.
It's different. It's more close to the prose.
Interesting. I want to ask Mirza about this too, because you're working intimately with these texts. You've worked with his earlier poems, and then you just read Emigres Soul, which is a bit later. What do you notice working so closely with the language in terms of the evolution of the work? The way it's changing, or what are you noticing?
Well, the language is more or less the same. You can definitely tell it's the same guy, but sort of the focus is different. His early poems, or most of them, are set in a stretch of trenches, maybe 200 yards long. It's a tiny little cauldron of hell. And these new poems are, about Berlin, about cities in the world, about Scandinavia or what have you, So the subject matter is different, but the language is more or less the same. You can definitely, you can definitely tell it's Faruk Šehić. No mistake about that.
Good. Maybe we should look at some of the recent prose, since you're talking about it. And I know you're working on translating some of these stories even before the book is out in the original language. There's an excerpt from a piece that is the final story in the book, right? And in English, the title is Dark Ramblings of a Light Salesman. A light salesman. I should emphasize that properly. So would you like to read some? And then Mirza can pick up? Okay. Might want to move it closer.
Ja sam bijeli obrnuti John Coltrane i plavim vozom prevozim svoje zarobljenike tamo gdje će imati radnu obavezu, redovnu ishranu i gdje ću ih svakog jutra prozivati na zbornom mjestu. Njemci bi rekli der Appelplatz. Preko dana radim, plijevim malinjak, berem ono što je zrelo za brati. Kuća u kojoj živim je toliko nagrađena gelerima i metcima da je ni rođeni zidar ne bi prepoznao. Tako sam zauvijek zaustavljen u vremenu i prostoru rata. Nije da me to nešto uzbuđuje, iskreno. Svejedno mi je, jebe mi se za rat i poraće. Nekad sednem pored ulaza u kuću, stavim sto i jednu stolicu ispod vinove loze, napravim jaku tursku kafu, sjednem licem prema fasadi, nisam okrenut prema putu nakon kojeg dolazi trava, pa gusto šiblje, onda miljacka. Zabuljim se u rupe od gelera i metaka, pijem kafu i piljem. Kroz te nepravilne okulare, kroz sočiva, kroz mnoštvo razularenih durbina, isprva sve što vidim je crnilo. Tama kroz koju ne mogu proniknuti dalje od mrtve tačke, mada volim mrak kad padne na miljacku i prekrije njenu vodu neprozirno od ljudskog izmeta. U nekom momentu vidim kako ne gledam to ja rupe od gelera i metaka, okulare, sočiva, razularene durbine i mahnite dalekozore, nego mene gleda nešto što ima 100 očiju nepravilnog oblika. Unutra u rupama pale se svjetla, iznad moje kuće mjesec je u punom sjaju, noć je pala na moj posjed, tišina, zrikavci, psi laju u daljini, farovi brzo prolaze autoputom prema jugu. Nikad ne prelazim s one strane granice koju uspostavlja rampa kada je spustim, zato je ne spuštam, osim u mislima. Granica mog posjeda je nevidljiva, meni je vidljiva. Za druge je to paukova mreža koju ne mogu primijetiti. Ne volim putovati, kućni prag je najviša planina. Volim biti tu gdje jesam, biti na jednom mjestu, imati rutinu, raditi iste poslove, osim kad zurim u fasadu sa 100 očiju. Rekoh, unutra u rupama pale se svjetla, kao da je neko upalio svijeću negdje u daljini, s druge strane i onda je usporeno prinosi prema svim tim prorezima od gelera i metaka. Svjetlost svijeće neke rupe ispunjava intenzivno, a neke slabije zbog udaljenosti i ugla kojim svjetlost dolazi do rupa. Nisam ovo dobro objasnio. Zaboravimo na svijeću. Mahniti dalekozori postaju sve svjetliji i svjetliji. Osjećam kako svjetlost izlazi iz rupa i šara po mojoj sjedoj kosi. Nekad sam imao žutu kosu. Vremenom je izblijedila kao i mnoge stvari što gube sjaj. Sad mi je kosa bijela, ima pomalo plav odsjaj. Svjetla šaraju po mom kombinezonu, stomaku, kao da me ispituju svojim neupipljivim ticelima. Ja pijem kafu i trudim se gledati kroz rupe od gelera i metaka na fasadi srpske kuće koju sam jeftino kupio. Njen bivši gazda mi nije ništa rekao o svjetlosnoj prirodi fasade iščupane metalnim kljunovima. Kogod da svjetlošću ispunjava 100 očiju, taj je sigurno mađioničar.
Right. First, these are all unedited first drafts. So if you hear something horrendous, just belt me with something. And to give you a bit of context, this is from a short story about a curmudgeonly old man who bought a property near on the banks of the Miljacka River, a river which flows through Sarajevo. By the way, Americans find it hilarious that we call that thing a river. In this country, it would be called a rivulet. But anyways, so he has his property, and what he does, he likes to accost unsuspecting cyclists with his sledgehammer for trespassing. And he grows raspberries, and he has some wild hallucinations in his spare time. Here goes. I'm the white John Coltrane in reverse, and I transport my prisoners in a blue train for statute labor somewhere where they would have regular meals, and I muster them every morning at the roll call spot, or as the Germans would say, am Appelplatz. By day I work, I weed my raspberry ridges, I pluck what's ripe for the plucking. The house I live in is so badly defaced by shrapnel and bullets, not even the man who built it will recognize it. Thus I'm forever frozen in wartime and war space. Not that this bothers me much, it's all the same to me if I'm honest. I just don't give a fuck about the war and its aftermath. Sometimes I sit by the front door. I place a table and a chair below the grapevine. I brew myself a cup of strong Turkish coffee. I sit with my face towards the facade. I do not face the road, beyond which lies a stretch of grass, beyond the grass a thicket, and then the river. I stare at the shrapnel and bullet holes. I drink coffee and I stare. I stare through these irregular lenses and eyepieces, through the multitude of unbridled long glasses. All I see at first is pitch black, a darkness I cannot penetrate beyond the dead center. Yet I like darkness when it falls on the river and covers its waters, opaque with human feces. At some point I see not myself looking at and through bullet and shrapnel holes, lenses and eyepieces, unbridled long glasses and deranged binoculars, but myself being looked at by something with hundreds of irregular shaped eyes. Inside in the holes, lights turn on. Above my house the moon is in full splendor. Night has fallen on my property. Silence. Crickets, dogs barking in the distance. Southbound headlights swiftly glide past on the motorway. I never venture across the border which the barrier establishes when I lower it. Therefore, I don't lower it, except in my thoughts. The limits of my property are invisible. They are visible to me, though. To others, they are an unnoticeable spiderweb. I don't like to travel. My own doorstep is the highest mountain. I like being where I am, being in one place, having a daily routine, doing the same chores, except when I'm staring at the facade with 100 eyes. As I said, inside in the holes the lights are on, as if someone lit a candle in the distance from the other side, then slowly raised it up to all those shrapnel and bullet slits. The candlelight fills some holes intensely, others less intensely, depending on the distance and the angle at which it reaches them. This is not a good explanation. Let's forget the candle. The deranged binoculars become lighter and lighter. I can feel the light coming out of the holes and meandering across my grey hair. I used to have yellow hair, but over time it faded, like so many other things that lose their splendor. Now my hair is white with a bluish sheen. The lights meander all over my overalls, my belly, as if to examine me with their intangible antennae. I drink my coffee and I try to look through shrapnel and bullet holes on the facade of a Serb house I bought cheaply. The former owner didn't tell me about the luminous nature of the facade pockmarked by metal beaks. Whoever fills 100 eyes with light must be a magician.
So Mirza, I'll just start with you, just coming off the English there. I happen to know you really love this story.
Yeah.
Could you tell us what you love about it or what draws you to it, both as a reader and a translator?
Because it's all about the character. There's nothing spectacular happening in this story. You know, there are no big events. There is no. The tension is subdued. It's all about this crazy man, and somehow, you know, the story works. It has its, you know, trajectory, its arc. You know, it's a well-rounded narrative. You know, and that's really difficult to accomplish. And I mean, I'm not a writer. I don't write myself, but I think this is a feat. You know, to make a piece of narrative that is just about the character. There are no events, nothing, you know, just this one guy, and he is the story. There is also, I'm not going to spoil this for you. You know, I hope someday this will be published in English. You know, and I don't want to sound any spoilers, but there's a great big metaphor in the end, you know, which ties everything up and works really well.
That leads us to talk about this story and it being positioned at the end of your collection. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you were exploring through this character, the way this character sees things, the way this character perceives, chooses to do things or not do things. What were you exploring?
It happens that I love to ride the bike during the summer. So I go outside Sarajevo. It's the Sarajevo's field. Very, very long waste land, part of land. It's airport is here and everything. And there is some kind of like villages or destroyed or not destroyed, empty houses or ranches. So I actually, in this story, I am the guy who is on the bike. So I'm not this guy. I met this guy, actually. I was riding the bike, and I see that I'm on the dead-end street. So I try to come back on the regular street, and I see one big guy who is standing in front of me and looking at me. And look at me with, you know, like I see in his eyes that he's ready for anything. So I will skip that, of course. And after that, it was very bad experience. I don't know who is in the house. I can escape, but I have bike. So I can hit him also. He want to go I can't go. I can't leave his property because
so he's blocking your
he's
way.
blocking me, yes. And he starts to torture me by words. So I know that moment when you want to humiliate somebody in the coffee bars, what we do during the war, in front between us, you know, when we get crazy. I know that he's crazy, so sometimes I escape. So I was thinking, who is in the house? Maybe he have reinforcement. if I hit him, somebody will came out with shotgun and shoot me. It's very possible. So after that, I remember this my one of favorite movies by Walter Hill, Southern Comfort. So I realized that this guy is Cajun. He's Bosnian Cajun. He's, you know, crazy guy. We said Cajun. So I start to write, but from his position. I want to be inside his mind and think and see the world through his eyes. So I work, and I put it on the end of my collection because, like Mirza said, I can't now said about what is the end, because this guy can be everything. He is bad. He's evil. In a way, he's funny. When you read the story, I'm like smiling.
It's a very funny story.
Yes, but it's also very dark, and he don't have it's not about about identity, or he's nothing. He don't have don't have ethnical identity or religious. He's out of that category. He's just like some pure evil. Like when river goes on high level and just kill the people, like tsunami. He can be like that.
Okay. I want to just ask you something that I've heard you talk about, and I've heard you talk about it in the context of the novel, but I'm sure that you're working in this way in most everything you write, certainly, and you've talked about the discontinuity of memory. In Una, you, as we talked about, our protagonist Mustafa is under his hypnosis and being called to surface and remember things from all parts and times in his life. Can you talk about the need to knit memory together, the fragmented memory that you felt you had to knit together for yourself?
Yes, we talked about that before 2 nights. So, after the war, I have problems with. We was refugees, you know. So a lot of people can be refugee. Some of that people have personal things, but I didn't have nothing. I have nothing, you know, just like this, you know, without rucksack. So in one way, when I was working on books, when I deal with the past in a way that I get honor with to my dead comrades and to that horror of death, who is very obvious. You know? So after that, I feel different kind of not sorrow, but some kind of melancholy or loss, and that was not about dead people, dead comrades, about destroyed houses, about burning towns, about concentration camps, about raped women. It was different. It was a loss in world of emotion, something untouchable world. So I know in my head I have, of course, we have all memories. So I know everything what I lived before the war. But how can I prove to you that? How can I say to you? No, you know, I was student of the veterinary medicine in Zagreb, and I have good life. I was my father and mother was the middle Yugoslavian class. And I was never been poor or hungry or I don't know. I was never been on the street. So I have my life. I have my rich life. My life was good. So, but when you became refugee, how can you prove that to somebody when you met a girlfriend or friends, new friends, and you are in the new town? You are refugees. You are nothing. You are nothing. You are you are not citizens of that city. Even the nations, we are the same. Like we have the same names. We are not enemies. But nobody likes you. It's normal when you are a refugee. So after the war, I want to. I have. This is just one reason because of why I wrote this book. The other reasons are more important. So I was thinking, what is important for me from my previous pre-war life? Houses were destroyed, and in that house, my grandmother was living. All my childhood, I was on that river Una. It was one beautiful river. You can throw the coins, and you see when coins is spinning. You see everything. It's like Swatch watch. You can see the mechanism. You see river. You can see fishes. Everything is inside. Birds and I was all my childhood I lived with nature. So I was haunted with that. I have one dream in which I standing behind the grape of vines, and it was like night. It was colored dreams, and I see the sky was like dark blue, and I see big moonlight. Moonlight is on the leaves, and I feel at the time happy. I feel suddenly happiness inside me, like wave, like big wave. It's rising, and in one moment I see that something is wrong. So, because in that dream, the house is still standing. Oh. Because the grape of vines is part of the house. It's on the facade, in front of the house. So I realized that is just a dream. So I have that dream constantly. And I want to just to rebuild that house. And one of the purpose why I wrote this book is that, and other, maybe much important than this previous, is that I want to build one bridge from this point of view, this time, to pre-war life. Mm-hmm. I want to make continuity, yes, because this is the major problem when you survive the war. You go through your life, you are strong. Nothing can distract you from your way. So I see that the problem is with memory. How can I continue my life if I'm not feeling that I'm in one piece? I'm in one piece with my body, of course. But what is with my memory? I want to have my I can't go with time machine in the past. But I do that in my book. You do. So I want to collect my memories, and I want to make that bridge, or I don't know other word. Mm-hmm. So I want to. It is like some kind of when you don't have leg and you make a prosthesis. Prosthesis, yes. So it's about how to be in one. Made from one piece, how you remade yourself. It's about imagination. I can't describe this book. I can't describe this book in one sentence because it's not Hollywood movie. Right. It's literature. Right.
I will say also, I'm tempted to just read a few sentences from the translation so you can hear the way that through the book, that house, which is kind of standing in for that effort to build a bridge, the way that the writing tries to get at that house, we see very literal writing about the way the house was destroyed. We see fantastical writing, almost a dream of the way that the house floated away on the river with his grandmother. We see a constant effort to resurrect the period, to put his grandmother back in the house. This is Mustafa, the protagonist. There's so many ways that this protagonist, with urgency and tenacity, is trying to connect to the past. And I thought maybe I'll just read a moment from the translation, and then I'd like to invite you all to please join the conversation.
Just a second, if I may, please. The river from this book is not the same river, this story, you know. Yeah. This one is really nice and green and clear, and this one is just a sludge and raw sewage.
So this would be the River Una, but I just want to find this one moment. I'll just read it briefly in English to save time, but so he talks about Mustafa. The house by the Una had its rises and falls. It burned down the first time in 1942 during the Allied bombing of the town, and only a heap of ash was left. The household members gathered around it as if it were the grave mound of a dearly departed relative. In the time that followed, the wind blew the ash away over the river, and a new house was built of tufa and una sand, but with timber for the stairs, reeds for the paneling, and oaken beams for the diagonal supports of the walls. That was the house I remember, and it would meet with the same fate, except that it was destroyed in a different way by a dirty, uncouth hand in 1992 that held a cigarette lighter to a sheet of paper that fell in slow motion onto a petrol-doused carpet, which would sweep the house away into the sky. With the words, "You'll rise to the sky in smoke," in his poem Death Fugue, Paul Celan unknowingly wrote an epitaph for my grandmother's house. Those were its earthly downfalls, but the inner world is quite different, and here the house continues its existence. Its residents are still living inside in that airy space. In the summer, the wonderful aroma of roasted coffee rises from the roasting drum on the porch formed by the roof, which slants steeply down to the part of the courtyard facing the river, and on, and suddenly we're back in. We're back in the community of that world, in the house. And I just find that effort to resurrect through writing very powerful. Mustafa certainly is doing it. And that sounds like the project you are undertaking. Is that something you're still working through in your current stories or your current work?
It was, when I published this book, I didn't think about what will be happened, what kind of reception will be, who will read my book. Of course, I know who will read my book, but I have my aim with this book. So, but it was, a lot of people start to read the book, and one edition, second edition, third edition, fourth edition, and edition in Serbia and Croatia. It became like a hit, like best-selling book in the region. Even it's not so easy to read. It's not a book like you can read for one day. Somebody can, if you like a poet, if you like Bruno Schulz literature or literature like that, you can read it for one day. But it's not for one day. So this book have a great success. So in a way, when I want to start another book, I can't, because I must work with translator. I must make promotion, goes on to tour. So I'm always with that book. Like she's not a small child, but I must be like father and mother and parents. And I always sometimes I just forget everything, and they invite me to one festival in promotion, and I realize that I'm not in the book. Mm-hmm. So I must prepare myself, and even when I want to work something new, I see that I'm stuck, because I must work with everything around the book, translator, editors, another audience. You go when book goes in another language, you get new readers. There is new for them. For me, it's old. This book is 8 years old. So, but here is new. Here is new. When I go to, I don't know, to Poland, it's new for them. Mm-hmm. And of course, once you must make cut and go. And now I write something totally different. Even in this collection of short stories, there is like one character, Gargano, who is the part of the Mustafa, who is like some kind of devil inside. He emerged in one short story. He's like
in one of the current collections.
Yes, he is like
stories.
He appeared himself like, but in totally different. Now it's positive. He is not evil. He is totally different, and it is a way that I make a little connection from one book to another book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gargano is in a few of the poems from My Rivers, right?
Yes, of course.
I would love to invite you to please join us in conversation. There is a roving mic, if you could speak into it and share your name if you'd like, and just ask your question to Mirza or to Faruk about any of the work we've sort of put before you. There's lots more, but it would be nice to have some questions. Anyone?
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Alyssa. I translate from Polish, so I catch every 8th word. It's a little perverse to sort of question an author's view of his own character, but what you said about the old man, I mean, the story is just so immediately gripping. The voice of this old man is so immediately gripping, and it strikes me that if he were pure evil, he wouldn't be that interesting. What makes him interesting to me is that he's attacking, but at the same time he's defending. And I wonder what he feels he's defending, you know. Obviously there's a sort of animal level of, you know, get off my land. But it also strikes me that he's addressing someone. So as I listened, my first question was, who is he talking to? Because he's not simply trying to get rid of someone, because then he wouldn't, there's a certain point in which he says, no, that's not a good explanation. I mean, he's kind of editing himself. He's presenting like himself as in some way. And I just wonder, a man of his generation, who does he want to be understood by? You know, that's...
No, it's interesting question. I said that he is pure evil, but he's not just pure evil. Everything is inside him. So now I must say, who is he? In the end of the, he can be crazy. You know, he can be in other kind of reality. I was reading one article about from Andrew O'Hagan, I think, if I may correct. And I was reading in English, and I found one like dark bubble on the internet. He was writing about that people who are haters and everything. That dark bubble. I like that dark bubble. It was in my head, and when I working on that, I know that I just translated in our language, and it is like mračno brbljanje, dark bubble, and it was the dark bubble, and you translated different, of course.
Yeah, ramblings.
I'm not expert.
Not babbling,
Yes,
rambling.
yes. I'm not expert, but I like that dark bubble. It was, you know, make good sound in my mind, and I think about that. It's like in music. It gives me some rhythm, and so I met that guy personally. I was thinking about that outskirt of the Sarajevo, and it was there is several villages. People lived like Serbs, Croats, Bosniaks together or separated. Now everything is changed here. A lot of people go or sell the house. So it was like not ethnic cleansing. People from East Bosnia, Bosniaks, they come and buy the houses from the Serbs or Croats who goes in Serbia or Croatia or wherever. So it was like, it's strange. They live on that land, and I ride a bike, I see that, and I see that they live there, but they are not from there. This is not their land. They buy the land, but they're refugees. They're still refugees. Even they have, I don't know, cattle, or it's a village. So I was thinking about that. When I met this guy, I see that house. That house was like, it's like museum of the war. On the facade, it is like you can't put the cigarette. It's from the holes. Everything from mortar shell, from the bullets. So it was fascinating. I was fascinated with that house. Then he comes and blocked my way. And I was afraid. Of course, I was afraid because I see he's crazy. And in the story, I become him. I'm in his mind. And when you read the story, you know that he killed that guy who is on the bike, me. Not really me. But he's crazy. He have friends. Friends come to him and they talk. He tries to be kind, but he knows that he's evil. And this, there is one creatures look at him, but he is not afraid. They're from other world. They're extraterrestrials. So they want to conquer the world, but it's from his mind.
Luminozoids, he calls them.
Yes. So it's a strange, it's a fantastic story. It's a very spooky story, and nothing can interrupt him, because he said I'm sleeping, and he have big belly, and he is snoring. Snoring. He's snoring, and he said, I know this creatures made from lights. They afraid me because they think when I'm snoring that I'm talking some kind of defend poem, defend mantra, you know. So it's strange. He's crazy, of course, and in a way he is totally sober and normal. And at the end, he said that river is floating through his body. It's river Bosna and river Miljacka, and he is not state, he is country, he is Bosnia. In the beginning, at the end, he transformed himself into the country.
Okay, that's the spoiler.
So, yes. I must say that because I can't explain. Okay.
Does anyone have, who else would like to ask something? Faruk or Mirza? Yes, yes. Oh,
Hi, my name is Tony Mond. I have an interest in world literature. This is a question for the writer. How did your family and those close to you react to your stories? And how, I just want to know.
I remember a lot of course, reaction. And my father said to my mother, I'm not in the book. And
was that a complaint or something?
A little bit.
Ah, okay.
And mother also was only grandmother, and because my intention was that I deal only with old people, small child, and imaginary creatures. So it was my intention. I want to escape. I want just to erase the people with like us now, adult people. I want to, it was my attitude, not attitude, my approach, because this book is not against society, but it's. I just want to escape that kind of people who have responsibility, you know, who are guilty for our reality. So it was my intention. So. I have, of course, a lot of like commentaries, compliments, or sometimes in the beginning I put the originally names. It was stupid, original names and nicknames, and because I didn't think about that, and some of them, some people was like embarrassed, or I don't know. And after, one of the most important compliments for me was from one my guy, Žile. He said to me, he is like electrician. He is not intellectual. He's not into literature. He said to me, you know, I read your book. Everything was like exactly like you wrote. So for me, it was like, I don't know, the biggest review ever.
My name is Jackie, and my question is, what do you feel about what do you think is the difference between kind of the writing that you're doing right now versus journalism, and how that touches the issues of dealing with conflict, and how do you see the future about this kind of literature how do you see about this future of your writing to evolve, to keep touching people about this subject?
Difference between what you're doing in journalism.
Journalism is something for me. It's like you have like some kind of table with buttons. So I can just put one buttons, and I know I can made article. So sometimes because I work in a magazine, one political magazine, I have my page, or I have column.
Column.
So yes, and. I always must think about that political events and everything what happened in my region, my country. And sometimes I go on countryside and make reportage with people, with ordinary people. So it's different. Sometimes I can, when I'm lazy, when I'm very lazy, I go into my files and find something literature and put inside my column, because column is just space. So sometimes people read a lot of the chapter from this book I published in my column. Yes, and the people who hate me, my haters, they said, yes. That they said the book is not literature; it's journalism, because they saw that my text in magazine, but it's literature. I just borrowed that, and people sometimes can't make like some kind of difference. What is the literature, high-end literature, and what is just journalism? So it's just different. When I do real journalism, it's different. It's just different kind of language, different kind of concentration, and I must think about who will read that. I can't put that in that text this kind of level of meanings. It's different language. It's different discourse. I said.
I just want to add something, question for Mirza along that line. Mirza, we've talked about translation as architecture, as engineering, as writing. How do you see yourself as a translator?
As an architect and engineer of words,
Not as a writer.
No. I don't write, and I don't consider what I do. I don't consider that writing. It is closely related, but it's architecture. It's architecture because it's not quite an art form, and it's not quite engineering.
And that's your approach, is
Yeah.
to work with the words and build.
Exactly.
Okay.
Operate in this liminal space between art and manly pursuits.
I saw a hand up somewhere here. Did someone have a question on this side? No? Okay. Yes.
Cynthia.
Well, it's sort of. Hi, I'm Cynthia Yee. I haven't read your book yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. But my understanding is you are trying to resurrect memories of home, like grandmother's home, and sort of retrieve that home that was destroyed. And with that home, you also have language that is primal to your childhood. And when that language is translated, how do you feel about how it sounds in new language? Because the nuances and the shades of language of childhood is so loaded with emotion. And when it's translated, say, into English, which I find to be a colder language, do you feel disappointed in the way it sounds?
No, I don't feel disappointed. My knowledge about English language is not so high like his knowledge of my translation, or like Mirza knows about. He is into the language. I'm not. I can't write in English like I can in my mother tongue. So for me, I'm happy when my book goes into other language, because I think that book became a little bit different book, and so I never want to mess with how said. I don't want to interrupt my translator. I said no. This is. I don't. He sent me question. I just answered it. He works on my book. It's now this is different, a little bit different. This is my book, but also by Will Firth, or this passage is also by you. So I work with a lot of translator, and it's hard. It's hard working. Sometimes I was so pissed off or not mad, because I don't have private life. because my Bulgarian translator sent me message, what is the trombone? Trombone is one, it's from...
Rifle grenade.
Yes, and so I tried, I want to describe her, but they don't have that word in the Bulgarian, and don't have. So he said to me, it's mine, but it's not mine. So, or just this Will Firth, he sent me like on the 15 pages. I answered on 65. I'm working for days just to answer him. And during that work, I see that I will fix my book. And I go into my mother tongue and I fix.
That's interesting.
So he find a lot of errors or mistakes. So my book can be only better
That's good.
for me, because they addressed to me, they said, this is not this kind of tree. It's American nutshell. So it's a black orah nutshell. Kako se orah?
Walnut.
So he discovered to me, or this is, he said to me, this is the flower of Orsaga. Orsaga is some native tribe. I said, I don't know. So I fixed that. I go into my text original and I change it. So I'm not. I like when the book goes inside the other language. It's just transfer. It's some kind of different world. But I think that translator must hit the main construction, like base, some when you want to build a house, you must have something. Foundation, yes. So of course there was also a little bit misunderstanding when I work with translator, because we are humans. We make mistakes.
Mirza, do you want to jump in on that discussion a little bit from your end as a translator working with multiple authors and the way that you work in relationship to authors? Is there a way that you approach things, or does it change?
I try not to pester authors too much, you know. I do my own research, and if I get really stuck, you know, I may send a few emails and ask questions, and that's it. But I try to work independently.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
I may have missed this, but did you write before the war?
No.
At all?
No.
Not at all?
No, only for myself. It was like very
A
secret.
hobby?
Secret. I hide it.
Ah, okay. So would you say that the war was the motivating factor that got you? Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. I have the similar feelings.
Would anyone else like to join in? Alyssa.
Me again. A question for both of you, and maybe it's an obvious one, but I'm very curious about the ways in which the language has changed in the last 20 years. Because I work with Polish, there's certain ways in which Polish has just obviously changed, you know, through the 90s especially. And as a translator, it seems to me it's something that I deal with a lot. So slang, you know, how has slang developed, and does it play an important part in your work on these texts?
And I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, every speech community has slang. You know, so we have slang, but it doesn't use a lot of that. So it doesn't enter into it.
You mean your work on Faruk's work in particular?
Yeah.
Have you noticed, just to add a bit here to your question, in your work with other authors, a kind of evolution of the language that has surprised you, and over a span of years, some things that you've had to address or work with?
Seems to me that people are more relaxed about social and regional dialects these days than was the case before. Yeah. But I don't know if I would repeat this in court. You know, I'm not.
You mean going back and forth between different dialects, or?
Yeah, writing in dialect. You know, writing bits and pieces in non-standard varieties. You know,
So
Whether
more relaxed
exclusively
means
or
people-
just, peppering the text with non-standard turns of phrase and words and stuff. I think that my impression is that there's been more of that recently. But
So people feel freer to
Yeah.
play with it,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
if it's not their own dialect.
no, it is their own dialect usually, but there used to be this notion that that non-standard varieties are not fit for literary purposes, and that is on its way out, I think, and that's good. I like that.
Anyone else? Okay. I know we have some books, right, for sale. And again, this is Will Firth's translation of Quiet Flows the Una, published by Istros Books. So we have that book for sale. And please feel free. And Faruk, I think, will sign, right? Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.